Hi, welcome to the MCB Community Update. I'm your host, Eric Joseph, Executive Director of the Audible Local Ledger, part of the Massachusetts Audio Information Network, or MAIN, which provides reading services across the state of Massachusetts to people who are blind or print disabled. The MCB Community Update will interview Commissioner John Oliveira quarterly, and it will speak with other members of the MCB to find out more about the services and support that MCB offers the blind community. We welcome feedback and any suggested questions that you might want asked. Now, here is this month's MCB Community Update. Good morning. Our guest this month on MCB Community Update is the pre-ETS, or Pre-Employment Transition Counselor for both the Northeast and the Metro West region at MCB, the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind, Mayanne Macdonald-Briggs. I'm eager to speak with Mayanne today because I've interviewed many of the counselors and the directors of various services and support that's offered by MCB, but this particular support service I haven't had a chance to learn about. And I've heard from many that Mayanne is a star. So let's dig in and learn some more. Mayanne, how are you this morning?
I'm very well, thank you, Eric.
Excellent, and thank you for joining us. Perhaps tell us a little bit about your work history, about how you came to MCB. Is this something you've always done, working with state agencies or with the disabled in some manner?
It is, Eric. I started teaching at Perkins School for the Blind almost 30 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I taught in their deaf-blind multi-handicap program after graduating from Boston College with my degree in severe special education, my master's. And after Perkins, I worked for 20 years at the Carroll Center for the Blind as an itinerant teacher of the visually impaired, 16 years in the field, and then 4 years as Assistant Education Services Director. So that's where I started. And then I've been with the commission for 9 years now, and found that being an administrator really wasn't what I wanted, and working with students was my passion. So I am lucky to be back with students and families.
So did you know from a very young age that this was something that you wanted to be interested in? Because you did go to college, and it sounds like you kind of took a career path very early on that was going to be in support of the disabled.
I went for my undergraduate degree. I started in nursing and ended up in psychology at University of Lowell at the time, now UMass Lowell. And when I graduated, I worked for a few years at South Shore Mental Health in a day habilitation program for adults with severe handicaps. And it was right at the time when all of the state schools were closing and folks were in need of day services. While I was there during my first year, we opened a classroom for 4 young adults, 22 years old, as I was, who had been exposed to rubella during pregnancy, and they were born with severe handicaps, both deaf blindness and additional cognitive disabilities. That's when I was introduced to this field, and that's what led me to Boston College for the first round for my deaf-blind multi-handicap program, and then I went back and did the Teacher of the Visually Impaired program. So I didn't always know this was what I was going to do. I knew some kind of service was where I was headed, but I like to say that this career fell onto me.
Wow, the depth and breadth of your experience really speaks to the compassion and the professionalism that you've put into this career for, quite a few decades at this point. So thank you for doing that. Just general society, thank you to you for choosing that path. I'm sure there's many along the way that are very grateful to you. So let's find out a little bit more about what this is, which I know very little about. What are some of the specific areas of assistance or service? Tell me a little bit about what pre-employment transition counseling is all about.
So pre-employment transition services is a mandated service now through federal mandate, through the Workforce Innovation Opportunities Act. And it's been in play for about 10 years. I think I came on just after it was adopted. And we have 5 things that we must cover. So the services that we must cover are counseling on enrollment opportunities for post-secondary education or training at institutions of higher learning. We must cover self-advocacy training, just, discrete teaching of skills around self-advocacy, career search, job readiness training, and work-based learning experience for students. And students who qualify are within the ages of 14 to 22 in Massachusetts who receive services under an IEP. So in Massachusetts, once a student graduates or separates from their local school district, they go into VR or they go into deafblind extended support services through the commission.
Now, the 5 mandates that you have to follow, were they already in place? And are there any of those mandates that are much more difficult or trying than others?
They are mandated and they were already in place. That was what the federal government determined at that time would create more opportunities for success if we built in these services at an earlier age, began working with them at 14 instead of 16, that the outcomes would improve for students with disabilities and students who happen to be blind.
And are all of those mandates equally challenging or opportunities?
In Massachusetts, we are so lucky because we have so many vendors. I mean, we have the Carroll Center for the Blind, we have Perkins School for the Blind who offer programming for students under these categories. And because of my, career-long relationships with both of those institutions, it's really nice that, we coordinate well together and we work really well together. Because I was a teacher of the visually impaired, I have a lot of contacts within the public schools, which allows me to get in and complement the services that the schools are doing to provide after-school programming, weekend programming, and during the summer.
Okay, so how do you implement these services? How do you go about actually face-to-face? Is this in connection with other caseworkers who might be working? How do you interact with the general spider web that is MCB, with everybody talking, communicating, and building programs like IEPs around individuals and consumers of MCB?
So we're really lucky that we have such a strong working relationship within the agency. So as students are typically usually 13 and a half years old, the children's workers will let me know that they're about to have a student turn 14 within that school year. Typically, I will attend an IEP at a school prior to a student turning 14. So I get to meet them, I get to meet the team and the family and start talking about what it is that we can offer. And then there's the rehab teachers and the orientation mobility specialists and the assistive technology specialists. So we all work together. And as students get older, then it's the VR counselors, and I will invite VR counselors to their senior year or their last IEP so that then they in turn get to know the student as they're graduating into adult service. And that model has really benefited a lot of families, that they feel like the connections maintained throughout the process.
That's terrific. Now, so do you offer this to every student, every person who's officially designated as blind who's of a certain age, or do they opt in? And do you ever have resistance to someone saying, I'm not ready to work. I don't know if I even want to go down a vocational route. I think I might want to just kind of learn how to get around and maybe do the life services, learn how to get around in my kitchen first, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I do. I have, students that may be diagnosed and maybe registered at 15 or 16 years old, and oftentimes they're not ready for a full complement of services. but I'm there to help advocate for their needs while they're in school. I am there to provide counseling on enrollment opportunities while they're still in school and post-secondarily. So you have to meet students where they're at and where the families are at, and then try to bring them forward. I have two caseloads kind of parallel. One is what we call potentially eligible. So those are students who are not quite sure what they want in the future and may not be able to work competitively and integratively for more than 25, 30 hours a week. So they may want to work 10 to 15 hours a week. And they may still be in an assessment process where we're trying to figure out where their life is going to go. Oftentimes, my 14-year-olds have no idea if they're going to work. At 14, most of us don't know what we want to do with the rest of our lives. So they may stay in potentially eligible for a year or two, and then we'll gradually bring them over. I had a student attend a summer program in Vermont, a work-based program this summer. And when she got back, she called me and she said, I really now know I want to work. And so she had been in potentially eligible for 2 years. It was perfect timing, brought her over to full VR, and now she has a full complement of services. She's taking it on. She's really embracing all of the services. But at 14, she was not ready.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And how lucky are they that they have brought on someone like you with that much experience in working with children, which is, so critical to try and get them on that path as early as possible. And I'm sure it is bearing great results. So specifically when a new case is opened up, are you face-to-face? Do you have a team that works face-to-face? Do you counsel the caseworker who then is face-to-face? How does your interaction with the actual consumer, for lack of a better word, or the young student or potential vocational student, how does that work? Are you involved on a one-to-one basis at any point?
I am always involved on a one-to-one basis. I am my own team.
Okay. I've heard everybody has said we go to where they are. Everyone I've interviewed has had that as a mantra, and I think it's a wonderful thing, and it's clearly a part of MCB's mission to try to go to where the consumers are so that they can help them where they're most comfortable.
Absolutely. And when parents or students aren't comfortable, oftentimes I'll meet with them with their teacher, the visually impaired, or their orientation and mobility instructor, whoever it is that can get me that introduction in. And it might be in the school first, it might be in the parent's home, it might be in the community if parents sometimes, they get worried about their dogs or what have you. So I'll meet them at a Dunkin' Donuts if that's where they're comfortable. Public libraries are one of my favorite spots to meet folks. So I'll figure it out and I go to them. And then hopefully we can start to build a relationship, because it's really about that relationship building with the school system, with the family, with the providers, and then introducing services as we go.
Wow. So let me ask you, you came through BC as part of your education. Is there a school that might be something that's more focused in this particular silo or channel of social work here? I know UMass is somebody that we often talk about. Some of the counselors have said that's where they got some training. Is that...
Yes.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. Boston College used to have the federal grant for those programs, and now they're located at UMass Boston. And it's more of a hybrid program now. I've taken continuing ed classes through UMass Boston, and they are fantastic at what they do. I have several colleagues that I went to BC with that are now instructors in the UMass program. So it's UMass right now, there aren't enough teacher prep programs for teachers of the visually impaired and orientation mobility instructors, rehab teachers, VR counselors. Like, there's not enough across the country. The orientation mobility instructors and the teachers of the visually impaired specifically, we're at a critical shortage at this time. And there are students, even in Massachusetts, who are not receiving services because there aren't enough providers across the Commonwealth at this time.
Yeah, I know that that's a goal of MCB is to try to encourage more college adoption of training in this specific environment because it seems like there's an awful lot of transfers from other skills that while I have spoken to some who did go through UMass and who did it that way, many of the counselors and the people who are working at MCB seem to have shifted from one career over into MCB at maybe a later stage in their career, and it is something that is certainly appreciated. But we know that if you start early on, those first years when you're just out of school and you're being molded, you're a piece of clay as you're learning, and those are really important. So the more we can get, the reason I asked that question about where the school is, the more we can push people to, did you even know this is a vocation that you can go to and you can feel like you're doing good in the world, and there's jobs out there. We're certainly short of some of that, that this is something that we would really like to encourage. So it's good to know that in Massachusetts, we have schools and resources that aren't available in many other states. We are truly blessed in terms of the social services that we can offer in this state.
Correct. And, you know, we had an all-staff meeting yesterday, and there's discussion around teaching an undergraduate level course now at UMass Boston, and kind of introducing these kinds of career paths. Because, again, like pre-employment transition services, if we don't start early enough, people don't find out, or they may never be exposed to this industry, the blindness world. And it would be a career path that a lot of people really would. I can say I have benefited greatly from falling into this career and just loving what I've been able to do for the last 30 years. So it's a path that many people don't know about. And
Yeah.
it needs to be, we need to shout it from the rooftops. We need to be our own best advocates and create, our exit plans, because there are a lot of us that have left the direct teaching field to go to more agency work, especially post-COVID. So there's a need in the schools for certain.
Sounds like you could teach one of those programs, Mayanne, with all your experience and your background. So
We'll see.
that, yeah. So let me ask in a sort of a different way something that I already asked you, which is about orientation and mobility, O&M, VR, vocational rehabilitation, and assistive technologies. We hear about these often. So where does employment services fit into the timeline of a development with a new consumer, assuming, let's say, that they are 14 or 15 or 16, a young person that has been designated? How does that work? And listeners, if you don't know what I'm talking about when I mention orientation and O&M, VR, or AT, we've produced several broadcasts much like this that do deal with each of those subjects. And wherever you're seeing, if you have vision, this, or listening to it on a podcast, you can also listen to those and learn a little bit more about those specific services. So, Mayanne, when all those services are out there, such great resources, how do you work with them? Where do you fit in that timeline?
So as early as 14 years old, we will write an individualized plan for employment as part of the vocational rehabilitation process. And what that does is it outlines not only a career goal, but what are the services needed to get a student to that point. So orientation mobility training is one of the number one indicators of success at college and career readiness, right?
Yeah.
And assistive technology for certain. Rehab teaching, if I say to all my seniors, you need to make 3 meals independently so you don't starve while you're at college, those kinds of things. So we work together. I always include those top 3, the assistive technology, orientation mobility, and rehab teaching, into plans. And it is sometimes more difficult for the rehab teaching and the orientation mobility services. We complement what public schools are mandated to provide. through teacher of the visually impaired, through orientation mobility instructors during the school year. So a lot of our services will happen during the summer, on school vacation weeks. The orientation mobility teachers will meet with the seniors in high school and their current provider, orientation mobility provider, and do 1 or 2 joint lessons so they figure out how that student learns, how to best work with that person, and then they will provide services going forward come June or graduation. And the rehab teaching, a lot of those skills, the Carroll Center provides a youth in transition 6-week summer program. Perkins offers summer programs, both 3-week and 6-week programs. So they're taught those skills very discreetly in the summertime. So it kind of complements all of the independent living needs that they will, those skills that they need to be able to become more independent. And the assistive technology, I met with Evan yesterday very briefly and said, all right, I have 22 seniors this year. We really got to get on this. So we start now and planning for what the needs will be moving forward. So as these seniors still have teachers of the visually impaired and can learn new technology if it's new for them, because a lot of schools in Massachusetts use Chromebooks. They may not be as familiar with Windows devices and JAWS and the kinds of tools they will need to be successful at the college or career level. So we will start meeting next week and planning out what the needs are and who needs it sooner than later, and prioritizing the students that will be learning completely new platforms. And again, we rely on our partners. The Carroll Center for the Blind offers a Computing for College program in the summer, which is fantastic. It's a 3-week program where they really focus on what are the tech skills needed at the college level. So we're constantly working together to provide those services and making sure that students that may live in a more rural but attend a school outside of their district also can get services like orientation mobility, because the school's providing where the school is, but then we can supplement and provide in the neighborhood.
Oh, thanks for that explanation. That fills in a lot of the blanks that I wasn't sure how the interaction works when you're building that IEP and with the other people. So do you have some, is it a day-to-day kind of, we have our work ahead of us every day, there's a daily load, or do you have a bigger goal in mind for like each quarter or for the year? Is there something aspirational that you have as a goal for your service?
You know, for me, I currently have 96 students on my caseload. So making sure that each family gets a direct one-to-one at least every year, and then filling in with other kinds of phone calls and emails and offering services and those kinds of things, but really being present within the school system's IEP process, making sure that the schools understand what our services are, how we work together to provide the best services possible for students. It's really about that individualized service provision and understanding of where a family is, and helping them through that process.
Do you feel that you have the resources to be able to do that? I know everybody could use more funding, everybody could use a few more hands, but given the goal that you just outlined, do you feel like that's achievable?
Usually, and when I
I
can't,
appreciate the honesty.
but when I can't attend an IEP, and if it's towards the end specifically of my work with a student or family, I will reach out. I am not afraid to ask for assistance. So, you know, I can't do this alone. My supervisors, the regional directors, if it's someone that may be going to deafblind extended supports, this past Monday, I had a colleague attend an IEP in my absence. So we do that because it's what a student may need. And it's great because it also gave that person an opportunity to meet the family and the student almost 10 months before separation. So it really is going to be great because now she has her on her radar and knows where the work is going to go. So it is achievable when we all work together. And so far, I've been so incredibly fortunate with my colleagues and my coworkers.
Yeah, I believe you will get those goals. There's something about you, Mayanne, that makes me believe in you being able to say, this is the number I have, this is the number I'm going to hit. So let's learn a little bit more about you. We'll close with just some personal questions, not too personal, don't worry, to get to know our MCB staff when they're off the clock. So, what is your favorite musical artist or group? And what was your first and then favorite concert?
Oh boy. Picking one is really difficult for me.
That's
But
the
if I had,
test.
across the board, I will have to say Billy Joel is my favorite. My very first concert, this is going to tell how actually old I am, was at the old Sullivan Stadium in Foxborough.
Oh yeah, concrete.
Simon and Garfunkel, 1983.
Oh wow, their
I
reunion
know.
tour. I was at that. I
No
was
way.
at that show. Yes, that reunion tour of Simon and
Yes.
Garfunkel. I was
And
at that
was
show.
it was so amazing as a first concert. That was just, it was
Well,
everything.
that was 20 years after my first concert, which was Jethro Tull, Thick as a Brick, So it was
Wow.
not 20 years, but it was quite a bit after. So thanks very much for your time, the
I
information.
have one more.
Oh, go bring it on. I want to hear it.
Anyway, I was just going to say I saw Ray Charles at the Providence Performing Arts Center. I know, right?
Wow.
What a thing.
And not to, again, copy you, but I saw him at the South Shore Music Circus.
Stop it.
Yes, I was like, 20 feet away from the genius. It was fantastic. It was fantastic. What a show. Thank you so much for your time and information, Mayanne. I'm sure many will find this very helpful. And listeners, again, if the subjects of rehabilitation, orientation and mobility, assistive technology, or MCB's registration process is of interest to you, we've produced specific podcasts that deal with each of those subjects. Be sure to join us next month when we speak with Commissioner John Oliveira in his quarterly update. Until then, thanks again, Mayanne. Bye
Thank
for
you,
now.
Eric. Bye-bye.
Bye.